From the studios in San Diego, California, this is Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network, coming to you live here on this Tuesday. It is the 14th day of March 2017 as we get set to go today. We have the bracket today, filling out the NCAA Tournament bracket. We've also got a couple more things that we want to get into, but we will do those first. And we'll start off today with the New York Metropolitans, and we'll start off more specifically with Tim Tebow, who had some disturbing news come out about him on Friday. Now, if you've been following this team, let's not try to kid ourselves. As I said on Thursday, we all know that if Tebow's here, still up in the majors or still up with the big team because of his monetary value. This guy is going to create more money in revenue. He's going to create more money in ticket sales. This is why the Jets signed him. That is why he is still with the team. It doesn't make it right. In fact, it makes it very, very wrong. But he has stuck around, and he will stick around right up until the end. I can promise you Tim Tebow will be with the New York Mets right up until spring training begins. Or right up until spring training ends. And why? For the reasons that I said. They know he can't play. They know if he sees high single A, this whole Tim Tebow experiment would have been a success. He's going to spend a lot of his time in Kingsport. He's going to spend a lot of his time in Savannah. And he may not even see high single A St. Lucie. That was before what came out on Friday. And that was before he made the diving catch and got the hit yesterday. And that is the story that came out that Tebow can't even play catch without airmailing somebody. And go figure, it was Yoenis Cespedes of all people. This guy can't even play a game of catch without doing something wrong. If you're the Mets, and they're not going to, this whole Tebow experiment is over. It's done when he can't play catch, it's done. He'll go straight to Kingsport. He'll never play a game in Double A. He'll never play a game in Triple A. God for, I mean, there's no way on God's green earth he'll ever see the major leagues. Especially if you cannot play a game of catch and you've been playing baseball all winter. Guys like Cespedes and Walker and Cabrera, these guys have not played baseball all winter. You have. You've been playing in an Arizona league all winter. And you can't play a freaking game of catch? Come on. That's painful. Is exactly what that is. That is painful. That's not entertaining. That is painful. And like I said, he'll be there up until the end of spring training because God forbid the Mets cannot squeeze every single dollar out of him for spring training that they can get. God forbid. I mean, honestly, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. It does not make any sense whatsoever to keep him there other than for money. And sadly, that is why he's there. He has to know it. If he doesn't realize that teams are signing him and using him for money and publicity, then he is a naive fool. He has to realize it, but yet he still goes along with it. And I can see why. Heck, if I'm getting paid in the triple digits, I'm cool. I feel the same way. Make fun of me all you want. I'm making a 6-digit salary. I'm cool. I mean, it's an absolute joke that he's still hanging around. And it's absolutely disgusting why he is still hanging around. It's absolutely incredible to me. It really, really is. Another thing that is absolutely incredible is what we've seen with the New York Knicks. And how on Sunday it hit a new low, losing to the freaking 11-53 Brooklyn Nets. Going into the game, they were 11-53. Now, because of the Knicks, they're 12-53. You're 26-40 going into that game. You're 14 games under 500 with a $25 million player in Carmelo Anthony on the pitch, the court. Sorry, a $25 million player in Derrick Rose on the court. You have a top 5 draft pick from from 2 years ago on the floor. Yet you're 16 games under 500, losing to a team that won 11 games out of its first 64. Out of 64. 11. And it wasn't close. I understand you want to look at the score line, that's fine. You want to take a look at that and see 120 to 112? It was close. No, it wasn't close. The Knicks allowed 60 points in both halves. Brook Lopez at the beginning of the game got how many wide open threes in a row? Thank Kristaps Porzingis for that one. Because this guy playing with Derrick Rose and playing with Carmelo Anthony more so, he's been with him for longer. Playing with Melo, he has developed so many bad habits on defense. When was the last time you saw him jump out in a pick and roll? Sure as hell didn't see it Sunday. When was the last time you saw him make a big defensive stand on somebody? When was the last time you saw him go out to the 3-point line and get a guy who rolled out? When was the last time you saw that out of him? He's learning from Carmelo Anthony not to play defense, and that ain't good. And then after the game to talk about how we're all just confused. Our plan on offense is for me, Lee, or Carmelo to go one-on-one, and then just whatever happens, happens. And he acknowledged that's not good, and that's not the way you play, but good freaking Lord. That's really how bad it is. And again, we all knew this was going on. We all knew that this was an issue, but because they lost to the Nets, who again have won 11 of 64 games, now 12 of 65, it all comes back up again. When you lose to the worst team in the league on the road, it all comes back. And it all comes back stronger and louder, and when it comes back, a little bit more comes with it. Like Porzingis after the game. We're all just confused. We don't really have a plan on offense. You had it come out either today or yesterday that Phil Jackson is running practices in the triangle offense during practice while Hornacek's not there. If you want them to run the triangle offense, freaking coach the team then. Coach the freaking team. Because you sure as hell aren't good at what you're doing. Don't kick the third coach that you've hired to the curb and run the triangle again. It's not working. You got Jackson preaching the triangle. You got Hornacek, who's just so confused he's given up to the point where, you know what, just do whatever the hell you want to do. That's when you get Carmelo Anthony going 11 for 26. That team is a cancer. It's not even a team, it's a group of people. They are individuals. They are not a team. I either just last week or 2 weeks ago, I gave LeBron James so much flack for the whole, oh, the owner's got to do this, the coach has to do this, the general manager has to go out and get this guy. I tore into him for that. You know what? You get paid to play basketball. Shut up and play basketball. Let the front office people deal with what they got to deal with. You just shut up and perform on the court because that's what you're getting paid to do. But in that, he's trying to make the team better. When you have guys like Carmelo Anthony go out there and talking, he's talking about making himself better. There's no cohesion on that team. They're a group of individuals looking for individual gain. Which is an absolute travesty. That's not the way it's supposed to be. It can't be that way. Otherwise, you get this. A group of individuals who are out for themselves and could care less about the team, which is the worst of the NBA. And the Knicks embody that. And it starts from the top. It starts from Dolan. It starts with it goes to Jackson. Then it goes to the general manager, which if you don't pay attention to the team, God freaking knows who the hell he is. Hornacek is so confused and so lost he's given up. The players don't care. They're just there to collect a paycheck. See how it all just trickles down? And it just gets worse. When you have people at the top who don't know what they're doing, do you really think the people on the bottom are going to care about their performance? No. He doesn't care. What the hell am I going to care for? The people above me aren't trying to do anything. Then what the hell am I going to do? I mean, I'm not. What am I getting out of this by actually trying? You don't get anything. It's. Again, as I said, it's the same old garbage I was screaming about last month. It's the same garbage I was screaming about in December. It was the same garbage I was screaming about in January. It's the same garbage. It's the same garbage. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's unbelievable. It's sad, it's disgusting, it's embarrassing, and it's all the same garbage. But again, because they lost to the Nets, who have only won 12 games this year, it all gets brought up again. And when it gets brought up again, it all just comes back a little bit worse. Because that's the way it works. Now to something lighter. The New York Giants, who signed DJ Fluker yesterday, offensive lineman. They also re signed Jerry for 3 years. They re signed Darkoa. The Giants are making moves, and they're making moves to make the team better. Brandon Marshall definitely makes the team better. I don't want to hear anything else. All I'm hearing from people that don't know about the team is, oh, Brandon Marshall's a diva. Give it a couple weeks. He'll be crying that he wants the ball more often. He already knows he's not getting the ball more often. He already knows that. He knows he's not getting the ball, so why complain? Why complain if you already know? And that's kind of the point where you're at. Then you have absolutely nothing coming out of the Jets other than, oh, we reached out to this guy, we reached out to that guy, we're thinking about talking to this guy. You can't be thinking about doing this stuff. You got to do it. Especially if you're the Jets. You're talking to Jay Cutler, and then it goes down to Chase Daniel. There you go. That's setting your ambitions high. That's your expectations going through the roof. You've got. I mean, you got to be kidding me. If it wasn't for baseball, the entirety of the New York sports scene would be in complete and utter disaster. That's all there is to it. If it wasn't for baseball that was in spring freaking training, the New York sports world would be in complete disaster. Speaking of spring training, we got scores from today. The Yankees fall today 10-6 to the Tampa Bay Rays. They also lost to the Bravos yesterday 10-2, Sunday rather, 10-2. That was CC Sabathia, who lasted 2/3 of an inning, allowed 6 runs. So that's not a good day for Sabathia. And then the Yankees again letting up 10 runs today. The Mets yesterday beating the Marlins 6-4 on the back of Tebow's hit and diving catch, because God forbid anything else came out of that game. And they also beat the Astros today 2-1. So you have that. Tomorrow the Mets play the Marlins in Jupiter, and the Phillies are at Steinbrenner Field to take on the Phillies. Yesterday in the NHL, the New York Islanders falling to the Carolina Hurricanes 8-4 in what was just a bad day. The talk around the Islanders now is bringing Yaroslav Halak back up from Bridgeport, which, here's my thought on that. I believe I said it. If not, the reason why Halak was sent down is because his agent was stupid and opened his mouth. You don't do that. First of all, you don't do that. Second of all, you don't punish the athlete for the agent being a moron. I understand that the agent is reflecting the player's feelings, but still, you don't mess with the player because the agent is an idiot. So he goes down to the AHL as a punishment, and fine, you want to punish him, that's fine. But my thought was, if he's not traded at the deadline, you bring him back up immediately after that. The deadline's come and gone. He didn't get traded, and he's still down there. Bring him up. What are you waiting for? Send Berube down. You guys thought Berube was going to be great. He's not going to do anything. He's not going to get better if he's sitting on the bench watching Grice and Halak. He's got to play. If you don't think he's going to be better than Christopher Gibson, throw him down there. See what he does. Because we're so happy to get this guy, and all he's done is sit on the scratch list the last 2 years. Let the kid play. Saturday, you had the Coyotes beat the Devils 5-4. Also, last night, you had the Tampa Bay Lightning defeat the New York Rangers. Next game for these three teams, you have the Islanders playing the Hurricanes tonight in a part of a back-to-back home and home. The Devils play. The Devils are postponed tonight against the Jets. They were supposed to play the Jets. The game has been moved to March 28th. And then Friday, you have the Rangers at the Garden taking on the Florida Panthers. Tonight, you have two games in the NBA that could possibly get moved. We already went over the game from Sunday. Knicks Pacers at the Garden at 7:30. You also have the Nets and Thunder in Brooklyn at 7:30. Depending on the weather, those games could get postponed also. That's what you got going on as far as those games. The next games for both teams would be the Knicks and Nets playing each other again, this time at the Garden on Thursday. That would be the next game for those two teams if they do not play today. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network. We'll do the bracket when we return for the NCAA tournament, and we'll run straight through to the end. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with the bracket. All right, we're back. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network. As we continue on today, we get into the NCAA bracket, and pardon me. We get into the NCAA bracket with the tournament starting tomorrow. You have a lot. You have the. Oh, I'm sorry. Rather, starting on Wednesday. My bad. Thursday. Sorry. You have the 16. You have the 16s and the. You have the 16s and the. Pardon me. A little bit of technical difficulties here. You have the 16s and the 11s playing on Thursday. So we got the bracket just in the same way that we were doing last year, except this year it's just me. Which, hey, uh, this is the way it is sometimes. Actually, we are actually going to take a just a quick little pause here, just so I can figure out what the heck is going on with this system. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Just give me about a minute or so. All right, we're back. We got that figured out now. So again, as I was saying, going through the games for the NCAA tournament, which starts on Thursday. Just looking through some of these seeds, you have the winner of the tournament last year, Villanova, getting the overall number one in the East. In the Midwest, you have Kansas. In the South, North Carolina, and then Gonzaga in the West. Gonzaga in the West. Very, very interesting bracket. And of course, you have coaches and you have analysts who are complaining about the seeding for the bracket because God knows you can't get through one bracket without complaining about the way it's seeded. Duke being a number two after an 8-loss season, that's a major point of contention for a lot of people. UCLA being a number three, Kentucky being a number two. There's complaints about the seeding and where teams are. It's also you're also looking at the 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 routes to get through the tournament for a lot of these teams. And with that, we will begin with our bracket. We did this last year with with Nick and Krusha. Tried to get Krusha on today. He's working, which, hey, as is life. So we'll just run through these really quick. So you have Villanova. We'll go from east. We'll go east down. So you have Villanova. Well, first of all, you have Mount St. Mary's versus New Orleans. Is one of the 16 games that you'll see, and the winner of that game has the right to lose to Villanova. So obviously, you're expecting Villanova to advance through this pretty easily. The next game you have Wisconsin, Virginia Tech. This is the first time Virginia Tech has been in the tournament for quite a while. That and Wisconsin coming out of an Big Ten this year. Notice, I mean, there are a couple of teams that are noticeably missing. Unless I'm overlooking them, you don't see an Ohio State this year in the tournament. I doubt I'm overlooking them. You don't see an Ohio State in the tournament this year. The Big Ten was just not a good conference this year. That being said, I think this is going to provide one of the better games of the first round. I'm going to take Virginia Tech on this one. I just think Virginia Tech, they're going to be jazzed up about being in the tournament for the first time. I think that could be enough to get them one win, if any. Then you have Virginia versus UNC Wilmington. This one should be... See, now, these are the games that you have to watch out for. 5-12, 14-13, and then you also... The 3-14s. These are the games where most of the upsets happen. You're used to seeing Wilmington in this tournament. Wilmington's coming off of a 12-5 record. They won the CAA this year, or at least they were first in the CAA this year. You're playing a Virginia team that was 22-10 and fifth in the ACC. Honestly, I think this is where one of the upsets is going to be. I'm going to take UNC Wilmington over Virginia. I understand UNC Wilmington doesn't play in the better conference, but if you're 22-10, and I understand the SEC is a tough conference, but if you're finishing fifth in the ACC, there's a problem there. And being ranked as high as you are, that's a problem. So I'm actually going to take UNC Wilmington on this. Then you have Florida and Eastern Tennessee State. Florida coming back, they have the tournament experience. That school has the tournament experience that Eastern Tennessee State does not have. So I'm going to take Florida there. Then you have SMU versus the winner of USC versus Providence. Honestly, my vote would be, if USC wins, I think they beat SMU. If Providence wins, then I've got SMU. I'm going to assume... Now, Providence... USC finished 24-9 this year. Providence finished 20-12. 12 losses good enough to net you third in the Big East. SMU finished 13-4. First in the American Conference. Um, I'm going to assume that USC wins this game, but honestly, you know what? I think I'm going to take SMU. I think I'm going to take SMU for that game. Baylor versus New Mexico State would be the next game out of this. Baylor finishing 25-7 on the year, second in the Big 12, and then New Mexico State finishing 28-5, second in the WAC. This is another one where an upset could come in, and Baylor doesn't really have the tournament experience. So I'm actually going to take New Mexico State. So I've got two of the 10 or aboves winning in this one. I'm actually pretty split here through the first six. I got three unders and three overs. South Carolina versus Marquette. I just think South Carolina is the better team, and there's really no debating on whether or not it's going to be Duke or Troy. It's definitely going to be Duke. Going to the Midwest, you have Kansas versus the winner of North Carolina Central, who finished 25-8 this year, first in the MEAC, against UC Davis, who finished 22-12, second in the Big West this year. Again, these 16 games, I understand it's for your right to play in the tournament, but you're essentially playing for the right to lose in the first round. Is essentially what you're doing. I mean, when was the last time a 16 knocked off a 1? I mean, especially when the ones are as convincing a number ones as these are. When you put up Villanova, Kansas, Gonzaga, and North Carolina, those are undisputable number ones, beyond any shadow of a doubt. Miami versus Michigan State. Now, Miami had the better record this year, I believe, out of the two. But you have to take into account the Tom Izzo factor when it comes to Michigan State. And they are always, always, always ready to play in big game situations as Michigan State. So I'm going to take Michigan State in that. Iowa versus Nevada. Sorry, Iowa State versus Nevada, rather. Nevada 28-6, winners of the Mountain West this year, versus Iowa State, who finished at 23-10, second in the Big 12. I believe this is going to be a Nevada game. So I have both 12s knocking off both 5s. It really is. It is seeded weird this year. Purdue versus Vermont. I really don't think there's much of a discrepancy there. I go Purdue. Creighton versus Richmond. You got to go Creighton. Oregon versus Iona. Now there's one of your local New York teams. Iona, who had a lot of success in the NIT last year. This is not the NIT. And I think against Oregon, they're going to find out the hard way that this is not the NIT. This game has to go to Oregon. I think Iona has a possibility of giving them a run for their money, but I don't see Iona coming away with it. Michigan versus Oklahoma State. I would go Michigan, and then Louisville versus Jacksonville State. This Midwest side of the bracket was a little bit more straightforward than the other side. Now down to the West. Gonzaga versus South Dakota State. That is one of the set 16s. Gonzaga, what was a 1 or 2 loss team all year. So I would say Gonzaga fairly easily. Northwestern versus Vanderbilt. If I saw that correctly, this is Northwestern's first trip to the tournament, and I know Vanderbilt has made it the last couple years, at least the last 2. Um, I I would take Northwestern in this case. I do believe they had a better record than Vanderbilt, 23-11, and then Vanderbilt 19-15. Yeah, 19-15. I understand that's in the SEC, where you have Kentucky, you have Florida, you have Arkansas, who's a top seed, who's a favored seed. You have Florida State, who is a favored seed. Florida State's ACC, my bad. So I mean, you do have favored seeds that are on the that are from the SEC, but I don't think Vanderbilt has the team built to do that. Notre Dame over Princeton. Looking through West Virginia, I have to go West Virginia over Bucknell. Maryland versus Xavier. Now Maryland's the higher seed. Xavier, you always see a team like Xavier going through in the tournament. I understand they finished 21-13 this year. Compare that to Maryland, who finished 24-8. But Xavier, again, is always one of those teams that just seems to find it during the tournament. So I'm going to take Xavier over Maryland. Florida State over Florida State and Florida Gulf Coast. I would go Florida. St. Mary's versus VCU. St. Mary's had a very good year, and they just suffered a bad loss against Duke, which I think knocked them down the bracket. I think they could have been a 5 or a 6. But that loss to Duke really messed with them. I'm still going to go with St. Mary's and then Arizona over North Dakota. The South, North Carolina over Texas Southern. These are easy ones. Arkansas versus Seton Hall. The thing that gives me a lot of faith about Seton Hall is not that my uncle went there and he would beat me over the head with a shovel if I had them going out in the first round again. The fact that they just played Villanova to a very, very tight, very, very entertaining game, that gives me faith that that Seton Hall team is ready. That they are ready for this tournament. And I believe they are going to beat Arkansas, and I believe they're going to give North Carolina a run for their money. Minnesota, Middle Tennessee State, I'd have to go with the Gophers. Butler versus Winthrop. Again, Butler is one of those teams that always just seems to be in the tournament. Just always seems to be in the later rounds of the tournament. Cincinnati versus Wake Forest or Kansas State. I believe this is going to be one of those if one wins, then one. Kansas State finished at 20-13 this year, 6th in the Big 12. Now remember, this is an 11 game. This is not a 16 game. And Wake Forest finished 19-13, 10th in the ACC. I'm going to assume that Kansas State wins this game. Cincinnati this year finished 29-5, second in the American, with a conference record of 16-2. I think this one's Cincinnati all the way. A rather low 6 seed, to be honest. UCLA versus Kent State. Really, UCLA doesn't have a chance at losing this game. Dayton versus Wichita State. Now, Wichita State coming off of a not that far of a run through. I mean, that run through for Wichita State was not that long ago. Dayton finished 24-7, first in the Atlantic 10. And Wichita State 30-4, first in the MVC, the Mountain Valley. I'm taking Wichita. I'm taking. I understand that was still some time ago, but I'm going to take the culture of Wichita State in that one. And then Kentucky versus Northern Kentucky. That one's fairly obvious. All right, so out of the West, Gonzaga, Northwestern, Notre Dame, West Virginia, Xavier, Florida State, St. Mary's versus Arizona. Out of the South, UNC, Seton Hall, Minnesota, Butler, Cincinnati, UCLA, Wichita State, Kentucky. Out of the East, Nova, Virginia Tech, Wilmington versus Florida, SMU, New Mexico State, South Carolina versus Duke. Out of the Midwest, Kansas, Michigan State, Nevada, Purdue, Creighton, Oregon, Michigan versus Louisville. So out of these, I would have to assume Villanova is going to go through. Florida, UNC, Wilmington. Florida finished at 24-8. And again, Wilmington finished at 29-5. Like I said, this is the first time Florida's made it into the tournament in the last couple of years. Ugh. My head is saying Florida, but my feeling is saying UNC Wilmington. My head says Florida, my gut says Wilmington. I'm going with my gut. I'm going to say it's going to be Wilmington that goes through. I think Wilmington is the team that has the quote unquote magical run this year. It's going to end in the Sweet 16, but at least they will have gotten there. SMU versus New Mexico State. I'm going to take SMU. And then Duke, South Carolina. It's got to be Duke. Midwest, Kansas versus Michigan State. Kansas, if I remember correctly, Kansas is coming off of a loss, are they not? Yeah, they are. They're coming off of a loss to Indiana. They've played two very tough games back to back. They've played Duke and Indiana. You want to say Kansas is more battle tested, but Kansas over the last couple years has had that bad loss that hurts them. And Michigan State is coming off a 2-point loss to Arizona and then a 19-point loss. Sorry, a 21-point loss to Kentucky. So both teams have played people. Their last two games have been against teams in the top 11. Here's my deal breaker. When I see a 1-point victory for Michigan State at home against Florida Gulf Coast, that's enough to scare me off of Michigan State. When I see a 1-point win at home against Florida Gulf Coast, that's enough to scare me off. I'm taking Kansas. I think Kansas goes through. Nevada versus Purdue. I'm inclined to take Nevada. Purdue just lost to Villanova, but only by 3. Take a look at Nevada. Nevada just lost to St. Mary. Yeah, no, it's going to be Purdue. Nevada just lost to St. Mary's 81 to 63. That'll do scaring me away from Nevada. Creighton versus Oregon. Creighton's another one of those teams that always seems to just be there. They always seem to be hanging around. They always seem to be looming. They haven't lost a game since they played Villanova. That was a while ago. That was when Villanova was number one. That was back on... Oh God, they were 13-1 then. That was a while ago. It was a long while ago. What do you say? January 1st. So they haven't lost since January 1st. Hold on, I want to make sure I'm looking at the schedule properly here. Oh no, I'm not looking at the schedule properly. I've been looking at it upside down. Okay. See. Okay. See, because I'm looking at it on ESPN and I'm going to the team's page, and when they show the schedule, they're showing it from the top down. And usually, when a website shows it from the top down, that usually means the most recent to the furthest away. It's not that way. Creighton has actually, looking at it properly now, has lost 4 of their last 7. They've lost to Providence, Villanova twice, and Marquette. Now I'm going to have to go back and look at Nevada and Michigan State, now that I know I'm looking at it wrong. Okay, Nevada's won their last 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. They've won 9 of their last 10, 10 of their last 11. Meanwhile, Purdue, okay, we're backtracking here after I found out I'm a fool. Purdue has a loss to Michigan. They've lost 2 of their last 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So they've lost 2 of their last 10. 3 of their last 11. You know what, actually, based on that, I'm going to take Nevada. Nevada's on the hot streak right now. And hot streaks, you know better, you know as well as I do, they tend to carry in the tournament. And yeah, Michigan State's lost 3 of their last 4. 4 of their last 7. Yeah, no, I'm not going to touch Michigan State. I'll keep that one. Creighton. Again, what did I say? Creighton lost 3 of their last 4. Meanwhile, Oregon, who finished with a 29-5 record, just lost to Arizona, but that one's acceptable. They lost to UCLA by 3. I'll take Oregon. Oregon over Creighton. And then you have Michigan versus Louisville. All right, what do we got here? Michigan versus Louisville. Michigan 24-11. They won the last 5. And are 8-2 in their last 10. Louisville 24-8. They have been, over the last 5 games, North Carolina, Syracuse, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Duke, loss, win, loss, win, loss. Again, as I said before, you go with the hot hand in these situations. I'm taking Michigan. I'll take Michigan over Louisville. I think Louisville's going to be the first of the top seeds to bow out. Gonzaga, this one's fairly easy. Notre Dame, West Virginia. Again, this is where you really got to look at these. Notre Dame, West Virginia. Notre Dame, 25-9. They're 2-2 in their last four. 8-2 in their last 10. 3-2. I'm sorry. 8-3 in their last 11. West Virginia, 3-2 in the last 5. 7-3 in their last 10. Again, my gut's saying Notre Dame. So I'll go with Notre Dame. Xavier versus Florida State. Xavier, oof, that's enough to scare me off of Xavier. Lost to Nova, Providence, Marquette, Seton Hall, Butler, and Marquette again, all in a row. They are, so that was 6. They are 3-7 in their last 10. Is Xavier. Florida State, honestly isn't much better. 2-2 in their last 4. 6-4 in their last 10. Now, again, I said Xavier is one of those teams that hangs around. I'll go Xavier. I don't like their recent record, but again, like I said, this is a team that when the tournament hits, they're usually very good. They're usually ready to go by the time the tournament hits, so I'm going to go with Xavier. St. Mary's versus Arizona. I think Arizona's too good for Xavier, for St. Mary's. UNC Seton Hall. I think you're gonna see UNC go through again, but Seton Hall, the way they played Villanova, they're gonna give Seton Hall a hell of a game. They're gonna give North Carolina a hell of a game. They are gonna give North Carolina a run for their money. I think North Carolina is going to win, but I honestly would not be surprised at all if Seton Hall won that game. Minnesota versus Butler, I'd have to take Butler. Cincinnati versus UCLA, I mean, you really can't mess with ball in that regard. Honestly, I think out of the South, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 that go. I think the top 4 seeds in the South are going to be in the Sweet 16. Now you get to the Elite 8. I'd have to say Nova and Kansas. I think for Wilmington and Nevada, I think that's where their runs stop. SMU and Duke, Michigan versus Oregon. I'm going to take Oregon against Kansas, and I'm going to take SMU against Villanova. No, I'm going to take Duke. I will take Duke. It's so hard. It's so hard to go against Duke. It really is. Gonzaga, Butler. I think Seton Hall is going to give UNC such a game. And UNC is not as good as it was last year. Neither is Butler, though. Butler 23-8, but again, and they've lost their last two games to Seton Hall and Xavier. But like I said, see, you got to go with tournament experience, and both teams have it. It's just a matter right now of which team is hottest. I don't want to be that guy who picks the top teams to go, the top, all of the number ones to go through, but you know what, really, that's kind of the way it is. It's kind of the way it's going to be. I honestly think you're going to see all four number ones play in the Elite Eight this year. That's really just the way it's set up. Um, Xavier versus Arizona. Arizona's too good, and then I think it's going to be UCLA. So a one versus a two in the West, a one versus a three in the South, a one versus a two in the East, and a one versus a three in the Midwest. That's what we got. Now we find out who's playing in the Final Four. Villanova versus Duke. Villanova, up to this point in the tournament, being the overall number one, has had every break go their way. With the way I see it, with the way I've done it, they're going to be playing a 16, a 9, and a 12. Duke is going to have to play a 15, a 7, and a 6. Duke, I think, is better. Duke has the better quality players. Duke goes through. I think Villanova is the first number one that gets knocked out. Oregon versus Kansas. Again, Kansas has had those bad losses in the tournament recently. I know they've won the national title not that long ago. And logic would tend to want you to pull you away from that thought. But losing to an unranked TCU who's not in the tournament, playing Oklahoma State to a 5-point game, Oklahoma to a 10-point game, Texas to a 10-point game, all in the last four games, that doesn't thrill me. That, and they would have also been playing a 16, a 9, and a 12 before they got to Oregon, who would have to play a 14, a 6, and a 7 if it falls this way. That, and Oregon lost to Arizona, who's a fantastic team, by 3, beat Cal by 8, Arizona State by 23, Oregon State by 21, Stanford by 2, and Cal by 3 doesn't thrill me. I'm going to take Oregon in this one. So I've got Nova and Kansas both getting knocked out. Now, the bottom end of the bracket, Gonzaga versus Arizona. Looking at this the way I'm seeing it, a number one does not play in the Final Four. I think it's going to be 2 twos versus 2 threes. If this is the way it works out, if what I'm predicting works out flawlessly, it's going to be 2 twos versus 2 threes. I think it's going to be Duke versus Arizona. And then Oregon versus UCLA. With the final being Duke, UCLA. And the reason why I think it's Duke and UCLA is that UCLA is too good. UCLA is a very good team. Arizona is a very good team. Oregon's a solid team. Duke has NBA players. That's the thing that separates Duke and UCLA from Arizona and Oregon. They have NBA players, or at least one NBA player. The question now is Ball going to be enough to keep Duke from winning it again and annoying the college basketball fan world everywhere? The final score, give me 75-72. The final score, with the winner being Duke. I think Ball is still a little too young for at UCLA. I don't think he has enough around him to carry the team. Duke has incredible players, incredible depth, NBA players. I think Duke is going to win the national championship this year over UCLA. So that is the pick for the network. So that is the pick for the network. The final four: Duke, Arizona, Oregon, UCLA. Duke and UCLA make it to the national championship game, with Duke winning it 75-72. That is my prediction for the tournament. And with that, we will end the program for today. I hope you guys enjoyed our second annual college basketball bracket. Thank you very, very much for joining, and I will see you guys tomorrow.